right, I think I'll make a start, and I'm sure there's just a few more people still filing in, but we'll make it work. Thank you very much for joining us today for this Ruby AI webinar. We obviously launched Ruby AI to everyone at our AI event in September, and we had a huge amount of questions and people wanting to see more and wanting to understand more. And we thought the best way to do that was to go into a bit more detail with you today to show you really how Ruby AI is helping organizations to make the most out of their workforce. So during today's session, we're going to go through what Ruby AI is in a bit more detail, what it's made up of, and how it can help. And then we're going to go through some real case scenarios where we've deployed Ruby AI and it's helped businesses to maximize their investments. So before I start, we are using Teams Live today, so there is a Q&A function. So any questions that you do have during the webinar, please feel free to put into the question and answers section. And what we'll do is we have a Q&A section at the end, and the team are monitoring those questions as they come in. So they will go through those, and then I'll pick them all up at the end of the session. But yeah, do feel free to drop any questions you do have into that window so that we can get to them at the end. So without further ado, today I'm really happy to be joined by Darko, who is going to talk you through some of the real deep dive technical pieces today around Ruby and show you how the back end works and some exciting bits. And I get to be the dulcet tones that will drive you through the rest of it. So I'm James Dow. I am the Technical Architecture Director here at Planet IT, and my job is to make sure that I'm bringing the right solutions to all of our customers. So today really is about driving that solution forward. Darko, I don't know if you have anything you want to add at this point.
No. So let's listen to your talk and I'll do the demo.
Yeah, that's the best way to do it. No, good to have you with us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by talking about what Ruby AI is and realistically why we're doing this today. So the big thing for us is Ruby AI is a robotic process automation on steroids product, as I would like to call it. It's something that goes beyond traditional RPA. And ultimately, it's something that we've been working really closely with Darko and the team at Robotic AI to develop and bring to the UK market. So the guys at Robotic have already done an amazing job of bringing this product to the European market and to America. And we are just working with them to make this product so much better for the UK market. So they've done a huge amount of work, right? They've got it deployed to over 100 clients across Europe and USA. They've won some awards and people have recognized how amazing this product is. And what we're doing is going, actually, this would be amazing for the UK market. Now, when we talk about robotic process automation and Ruby AI in general, what we're looking at is software that ultimately can imitate what a human does on the computer. Now, the key for me here is that when I say it can imitate what a human does, is that means that you do not need any specialist kind of access to a system. If you can do it as an end user, then Ruby AI can do it for you. So if you can click through those 5,000 cells, Ruby can do it for you. If you can interact with the ERP or CRM, Ruby can do that. You don't need any kind of specialism. You don't need any kind of back-end access. You don't need to give things privileges beyond what a normal user would have. And it's a huge win because of that. But ultimately, because it's computer-based, it can work faster. It doesn't have the natural thought processes that the human will have. It's not going to slow down whilst it thinks about things. And it's going to be able to work 24/7, 365. Whilst some of you, I'm sure, would be happy to work 24/7, 365, it's not the most effective use of your time. So let Ruby AI do that for you. But it can do that with no errors and in a completely scalable way. And we'll talk more about scalability as we get through this. But what we really mean when we say scalability is that the system can go from working on a single process to working on multiple processes to working on super complex processes without needing to change the architecture of the program or the design of the way things are built. It's designed to be scalable from the ground up. And ultimately, it's designed to take on those repetitive tasks, freeing your team up, your staff up to do what makes them valuable. We don't pay people to sit and do mundane tasks because they're good at mundane tasks. We make them do the mundane tasks because it makes the business better. Well, what happens if we could take away those mundane tasks, that repetitive tasks, the things that you're doing in and out every day, and give it to a non-human to Ruby AI, for that to take on, to free your staff up, to focus on the things that they can do, the creative thinking, the thinking outside the box, the taking on business challenges, whatever it may be, that they just don't have time to do because they're spending 16 hours in a spreadsheet that has zero value to you in the long term. And ultimately, all of this is super quick to deploy, and it's very low risk to you, because it doesn't require a load of IT assets. It's not heavy on you needing specialist access to systems. It can be done as a user. And ultimately, the way that we've priced this and this is structured means it's very low risk for you as a business. You can pick this up and start it working. And ultimately, you're not paying for it until it's implemented and functional. So just diving in a bit more to the product set itself, I suppose there's a few people on this who will be thinking about data protection, about security, right? Going, yeah, but you're going to make a robot do this work. How can I make sure that you're safe? Well, the first thing is the solution is ISO certified. Both Planet IT and Robotic AI are ISO 27001 certified. We do this as a secure deployment approach. The whole idea is to make sure that your data is safe. So much so that we can use bring your own key encryption. So you can actually provide the key and you can do the encryption yourself, so that we can essentially go, hold on, that we have no access to your data. Right? This fully audited, and actually the data that goes up to the orchestrator central platform is only just metadata. We're not taking actual any sensitive information from your machine. So from a GDPR data protection point of view, it's very low risk. As I mentioned, the pricing is super simple. The first thing is there's no capital expenditure. We do not expect you to pay for the product until it is operational, until you have it in place. So therefore, there's no outlay. You're not going to be looking at a multi-thousand-pound bill for you to get this set up. That's our job. We need to prove to you this works. And we also have an easy cancellation policy. So if the product is no longer working for you or the function changes, it's very easy for you to cancel this. You get as part of this the Orchestrator HQ, which Darko will show you a little bit later on, which also allows you to integrate third-party AI solutions. So if you are a massive Chat GPT OpenAI user, or if you're using Gronk or something else where you go, actually, we've made great use of this third-party AI tool, we can directly integrate and hook that into the Ruby AI product. And ultimately, the whole point of this is it's supposed to be simple. Start simple, grow and expand. It's supposed to be something that will make your life better, not more complicated. But the product has the ability to do very advanced, very intensive functions straight away. So that's built into the core function of the product, that it can be super integrated, super advanced, super clever, and it is a proven and tested solution. So I'll put this slide in because I think it's most important really to talk about where we can see this being used, right? And you're probably all sat in here going, it sounds amazing, right? Robotic process automation, I can make this better, but how does it really work in my industry? So we've picked a few key functions for some businesses, functions that most businesses will have, and just highlighted some of the places that we've already seen the product deployed that people are making the most out of it, right? So from finance, looking at procurement to payment, looking through accounts receivable, looking at client supplier onboarding, looking at intercompany management. From HR, looking at employee onboarding and offboarding processes through payroll and compliance and reporting. And into your IT functions, looking at service and application management, looking at batch processing, data migration, even password resets and account and authorization management. Think about those times where you have to change what someone's account does, but you need to request maybe that someone in the HR team approves that it's relevant for their job function, or a senior manager approves it. Imagine all those things being able to be done by an automated process that you haven't got to touch. Ultimately, there's not a lot of cases where Ruby AI won't fit, and where you won't find a scenario where you go, actually, if I look at our business processes, how much of this manual repetitive work could be done by an automation bot? Again, just to pull on a few more of those use cases. So think about integration between IT systems. Really, a lot of when we talk about integration, a lot of what we're doing is taking data from one place and putting it into another. So actually being able to do that is something that Ruby can do really well. Same when it comes to data scraping and retrieval, going into folders, going into emails, going into Teams chats, pulling files, moving them around. It's repetitive, it's repeatable, it's something that Ruby can do. File transfer and manipulation, super easy. Again, it's a repetitive task. batch automation, document reporting and generation, and obviously core system transactions. Realistically, Ruby AI is there to empower you to be more functional. So what you can do is really take this to the next level. There's not going to be too many use cases you bring to us where we're going to say that's not right. What we are going to do, though, as part of our process is have that conversation with you, have a design workshop where we'll say, let's understand what your business processes are, and let's try and see where Ruby will fit. We're never going to try and shoehorn this in somewhere where it's not going to work for your business. Likewise, we're never going to tell you that something's achievable if it looks unachievable at the start. What we are going to do is give you realistic goals and show you the real term savings we can make by freeing your staff up. Just to pivot and talk a bit more about the product and why it's a bit different. I mentioned at the start, it's kind of like RPA on steroids. And that's because traditional robotic process automation is very much following what a mouse would do on a screen, recording those screen clicks and essentially processing those through. Now, if you look at some of the other products on the market, that's essentially the approach still. It's very much, I follow mouse clicks here, therefore this is result. Anything changes in that environment, the interface changes, resolution changes, you get problems. Where Ruby AI is different is we're integrating multiple facets outside of that traditional ability to follow a number of mouse presses, right? The first one is the ability to process natural language. We've then got the ability to do both optical character recognition and intelligent document processing, the ability to scan physical images, to take JPEGs, to take PDFs and pull data from them and then remanipulate them. That's leveraging artificial intelligence and large language models to be able to read that data, that machine vision piece, to be able to pull back from what can be seen and then turn it back into usable data. The ability to integrate voice box, the ability to do business process management, and ultimately all of this is wrapped in a very advanced web interface that gives you advanced analytics, the ability for you to be able to look at what's going on and make a decision on that data. The biggest thing that I love about the portal is it will show you how many hours the process has been running for and therefore how much time it saves. So it's not just us going, well, we think it's going to save you 7 hours a week by doing this. It's just going, actually, we can see that this has already saved you X amount of time. And it's a huge benefit. So sort of growing on from the kind of what the features are, let's talk about what are some of the things it can do. The first thing is it's heavily integrated. We could integrate the product into pretty much anything where there's no API, so no existing sort of API system to integrate to a third-party system. We can find solutions. We don't necessarily, we're not held back by that. If you have something with a web interface, something with a GUI, then we can interact with that. Ruby AI fits really well where there's complex systems that other solutions have said they can't fix those problems. So where someone's told you it's impossible, someone said an RPA solution will not do this. Many of you will have already maybe tried an RPA solution in the past, integrated an RPA solution currently, and have been told that you've reached the limitations of it. Well, what I can tell you today is that those solutions, Ruby AI will outstrip very quickly and show you where it can fit into those very complex scenarios and make the most of it. Because of that as well, you don't need to worry about non-responsive vendors. So where you may be working with a third-party ERP provider or a CRM provider or a legacy system, maybe that the provider doesn't even exist anymore, you don't have to worry about telling them what you're doing. Because this can be done in the user space with user-based permissions, it doesn't matter. You don't need to notify that vendor because you're going to be interacting with their interface as a normal user would. And then ultimately, as I've mentioned, traditional RPA can be very expensive, but where traditional RPA would potentially cause an issue, you're not going to see that with Ruby AI. Just to continue to build on this, so we are a risk-free product in this space. We are unlike any other RPA solution. We are not going to ask you to outlay any funds at the initial point of discussion. We're not going to ask you to pay for consultancy. We're not going to ask you to pay for design workshops. We are going to give you those services. You are going to work with us, and we're going to find the right processes for you, and we're going to design them, and we're going to show you those cost savings, and you only pay for the solution once it goes live. So this is a hugely risk-free approach for you. It is a turnkey solution. So it will do everything you expect from an RPA solution and so much more. So if you have an existing RPA, we can pretty much transition what you're doing with that into Ruby with no risk and then expand beyond that. We are going to mean that if you are using an existing RPA solution, we can stop you overpaying for unused licenses. Right? At the moment, if you have an RPA solution, most of them will just charge you for a license and you pay for that whether you're consuming it or not. Our approach is very different. It's based on consumption and you only pay for what you use. It is ultimately an open platform. So we are open to extending the platform to your systems with your integrations. If you have a development team in-house and you've built an amazing product built around LLMs, or you've got a product that's third party that does loads of your system integration and you need us to be able to hook into that, we'll work with you and develop that into the product. That's not a barrier for us. That's an opportunity for us to show you where this can go above and beyond and be much more than a traditional RPA. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to hand over to Darko, who is going to show you a bit more of the product in the real world. And then what I'm going to do is I'll come back and talk to you about some examples of how this all comes together. Darko, over to you.
Yeah. Thanks, James. Thanks for the introduction. So hello, everyone. So I'm going to show you the actual product and we'll do some live demos. And I'm going to show you some use cases and what can be done with the platform itself. So let me share my screen. Okay, so what you see currently on the screen is let's say, the management component of the entire solution. The Ruby AI consists of two main components. The management component is called Headquarters, and it's a web application where you design the processes and where you manage the entire digital workforce. The second component is the actual digital worker, which is a client-based software. And this is where the execution of the automation happens. And these digital workers are deployed into virtual machines. And these virtual machines are typically hosted in customers' environment, whether it's on-premise or you're in your cloud environment. That's up to you. But what's important when James was talking about data privacy and security, so the execution happens on your environment, the data stays within your company, and nothing gets transferred to this main component. This orchestrator component is hosted in a cloud environment, so Microsoft Azure, in data centers in Germany and Netherlands, and it's fully scalable, highly reliable, and all the things that the cloud provides. So as mentioned before, so this is the place where you design the process. So this is what a simple process could look like. As you can see, it's like a low-code, no-code tool where you have different types of, we call them steps, where you can actually specify, open CRM, open an application, read some data from an Excel file, and then loop through every record in an Excel file, and then you have branching and looping and making decisions and so on. So this is how we actually design the process. Once you provide us with the specification, how actually humans are doing that. So as James mentioned, this is a fairly simple technology to deploy. So our implementation cycles are, let's say, from 2 to 8-9 weeks, depending on the complexity of the process. It's not heavy on IT, meaning that all we require from the IT perspective is the virtual machine where the digital workers will be deployed, and installation of all the applications that will be used in the process, and the user accounts with the appropriate authorizations to perform the operations that are required in the process. So we are fairly quick in this deployment. Once the process is released to production, the execution happens unattended, which means that the digital worker is not running on anybody's laptop. It's running in the background and performing the work that is required. It can interact with the employees by means exchanging information via files or applications. So we can also facilitate this kind of human digital worker flow where they can exchange information. So as mentioned, so we have like steps where we actually define what needs to be done, and this is where we are also using computer vision and AI. So once the digital worker starts working, we provide images where it needs to click on. So for example, in this particular step, it's going to click on the this radio button. And when the digital worker comes to this step, it takes the screenshot of the app, takes this image, and then locates where it needs to click. And we support robust scenarios where, we have, these controls can they can move around the screen, the resolution can change. We are all robust and resilient to those changes. So the how we develop is that we have many different types of steps, manipulating with the application, clicking, inputting strings, working with Excel, sending emails, reading files, all these different things. Obviously, as we are an enterprise-grade system, we support all these enterprise functionalities like versioning, security roles, process lifecycle from development to production, and all these things that are required to have a really enterprise-grade system. So let me actually show you an example. So I'm going to play this process, and this process is going to check for a status of the invoice in an ERP system. In this case, it will be an SAP system, but it can be, Sage, Xero, or whatever system you're using. We can work with any type of app. So the digital worker is going to check for the status of the invoice, if it's paid or not, and what is the overdue amount. And if it's not paid, it will send an email to the customer with a reminder to pay the invoice. So currently the SAP is being started. So once the GUI is ready, so as James said, we are operating on a user level. So we don't need any API access, we don't need any database access, but we can use, if it's possible, we can also, because it's a piece of software, we can also use the kind of the programmatic interfaces to applications as well. So the digital worker now checked for the status of the invoice and completed the whole process. And then, so I got an email that I didn't pay this invoice. It was this invoice number on this date with this overdue amount. So this was a fairly simple process, but we are typically talking about process that span over a couple of applications, Excel files, emails, and to have an automated process that goes to 3 or 5 different tabs could take in a normal automation project or development project, it could take a while to actually automate the process. With this approach, we can do it very quickly. As James said, so with Ruby AI, we can integrate also AI components, and with this, we can raise the complexity of tasks we can automate. So I'm going to show you another process where the idea was that we connected the digital worker with the LLM, so ChatGPT, and the idea here is the process of expense tracking. So what I did, I took a picture of a fuel petrol invoice, and I wrote a prompt to the LLM to actually process this image and to extract what is the total amount, what is the company name, and so on. And then also on the back of the invoice, I wrote my name so that this can be actually expensed to my account. So this is all being captured by the LLM. It's being transcribed, and then we open the, let's say, this expense application where we actually transcribe this data. As you can see, it read all the information from the picture, which was taken from a cell phone. So with the integration of AI, we can process images, we can process voice, we can generate voice, we can read documents, and all these different scenarios where we can tackle more complex tasks that require a higher level of cognition and reasoning. So this enables us to automate more and more complex processes. As mentioned before, we have advanced capabilities when it comes to many different things in RPA, but one of the things where we also focus is monitoring and maintenance. So we have a couple of functionalities that are really important for tracking what went on. For example, we can have video logs of the process which was executed, which stays on your machines, so it's not being transferred to HQ. And we also have a capability where I will start a process. So this is going to now happen in a remote. So this is happening somewhere in a data center. We have this functionality which is called real-time monitoring, where actually when the process gets started, we have a real video stream of what's going on in the virtual machine. So this is actually now happening in a live environment somewhere in a data center where a digital worker is performing those processes. So obviously there's a security model, and you have to have the appropriate security rights for this. But with this, we can monitor what's going on and actually track what went on. Also, what James mentioned, RPA and Ruby can really save time and money for your company. And this is a very pragmatic technology, meaning that we can actually really nail down what are the benefits that were actually realized by this technology. So one of the things that we have in the platform is a KPI functionality where we can track savings, but also other business KPIs. So for example, we can build a report. So this is an example of a dashboard that we built for our customers, where we can track how many hours did we return to your employees. If we have also the financial estimates, so what is the average workplace cost per minute, we can actually calculate the financial benefits of the technology. And besides these savings, we can also track various business KPIs, like, for example, how many invoices did we process, what's the average amount of the contract, and stuff like that. What types of contracts do we have, and so on. So with these dashboards, you can actually track your business. You can track seasonality effects. You can actually track your digital workforce and how they are operating and what benefits you are getting from the technology. To end this demo, I'm going to show you a video from a real customer. Now, one of the things that James mentioned as a very frequent use case is the integration, and I'm going to show you an example from a company called Herman. It's a German company where they're one of the biggest manufacturers of logistics and garage door equipment. So what they did with the Ruby is that they integrated a very old IBM application that is still being used today. And this very old application is used by their dealers to enter sales orders. Now they also have an SAP, and they wanted to integrate these two tools. So what does this digital worker do is actually it goes into this very old application, which is exposed through a Citrix environment. And you will see it's a very, very legacy type of app. And the goal of the purpose of the digital worker is actually to filter sales orders, to extract the data from these sales orders and then to open SAP and just transcribe this data to SAP. This integration was not possible without Ruby because simply it's a very old application without any programmatic interface at all. So with Ruby, what they got is actually opportunity to include this old application into their modern processes and to actually make it a part of their whole automation. They had one FTE that was just transcribing this, one employee who was transcribing these orders full day, just copying data from one application to another. So, and this was, a fairly quick project, couple of weeks where we actually integrated these two apps. So this was one example. We have multiple video case studies. We work with many industries. As James said, this technology is applicable to any company, and all of us in our organizations have processes which are repetitive by nature. So this was a quick demo from me. I would like to turn back to James to finish off this event.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Really appreciate it. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to talk through what we've just mentioned there as kind of a couple of examples. What I'm going to do is I've got 3 use cases, which I'm going to walk through in a bit more detail. And they're all structured in the same way. So I'm going to just highlight how we've structured this. So we're going to go through an education use case, a manufacturing and a pharma use case. What we have is a document processing, an inventory leveling, and a project creation process. We're going to walk through those process steps and what was involved and what the Ruby AI bot is doing. And then I'm going to highlight a couple of key bits of data. The first one is how much time was saved per day by taking this process on. How much time was saved in a year by this process being taken on by Ruby AI. How many errors were picked up by Ruby AI doing this, and then the total amount of time it took us to deploy the solution. So I'm going to walk through these scenarios now for you and give you an example of some of the flavors of things that we're seeing this be deployed for and used by our customers. So starting with education. So in this example, we're talking, it's actually a private education company that we're working with, so a private school, and they're looking at document processing. So what happens is Ruby scans and saves some documents that are coming in over multiple ways of entry. So that's both email, and they're also getting them as physical documents that are scanned in and saved into the system by the admin staff. Ruby's then using a degree of AI and OCR to extract the data from that document, and then it's going to put that data into their into their CRM system. So it's taking that data and it's then converting the data that's in physical PDFs, in physical scanned in documents, and converting them into data inside their CRM. Ruby then moves these completed entries into the completed folder, into the correct folder inside of their CRM management, and then it logs and triggers the next action in the CRMs. In this case, the action it then goes on to trigger is an alert to say that the payment's been received for the student fees, and that it's going to be triggered onto the next stage and whatever happens after that. So in this case scenario that we were building from, they are actually then triggering the purchasing of laptop devices for the student and the sending out of uniform, etc. Those kind of things. But that was all coming from a physical document that could either be mailed in or PDF'd and emailed in, and Ruby's picking up those pieces. Now, when they had someone doing this manually, it was taking them on average 2 hours a day to run this process. And when I say this process, they weren't doing it once, they were doing it multiple times during the day, but it was taking them about 2 hours a day that they were burning through. So that was an admin member of staff who is obviously highly skilled, has got lots of other things they could be doing, but we're spending 2 hours saving documents and manually keying in data into a CRM system. So that works out at about 730 hours over a year that has been saved by this being taken over by Ruby AI. Since running this process, there's been 0 errors. There's been no fault, nothing picked up, and Ruby's been able to do this without making a single mistake. It's not gone through and done what a human would do and accidentally type in the wrong character or mistakenly misspell a name. It doesn't do that because it's machine learning. It has the ability to understand the text it's seeing, and it's also got the ability to validate what it's checking. And it took us about 6 weeks to get this process up and functional from start to finish. And mainly that was around making sure that the end actions were correct, because the end actions had financial implications, because it's going off and triggering orders and triggering purchases and mailing. We wanted to make sure that the process was correct before there was any chance of it going wrong or anything where there could be a financial implication to the organization. But they are very satisfied with this in place. If we then look at it from a different point of view, this is for one of our manufacturing companies, and this is an inventory leveling process that they have. So the first thing is Ruby is looking up a spreadsheet. They have lots of spreadsheets, this company. They really like their spreadsheets. They enter a lot of data in. So Ruby is finding items that have been entered into this spreadsheet. It's then taking those entries from the spreadsheet and putting them into their single central ERP system. It then is updating the records on the Excel sheet to say they've been put into the ERP system, and it's creating the orders through their ERP via API to their parts provider. So essentially it's then going off and making the orders. So rather than someone manually having to log into the ERP and then go and trigger the orders, it's happening automatically. Ruby then sends a notification email to the production team to say that what's happened is that the parts have been ordered, and gives them the relevant information in an email, but it says that it's completed and done the actions. The production team then responds they can read the email by Ruby and they can respond to it. And then Ruby puts any response that they put in back into the ERP system. So if the production team responds to the email and says that they need to delay the project by X, or need to update the ERP, that data is then fed back in via Ruby back into the ERP. It can read the emails and it can then re-enter that data into the ERP system. This process was taking on average 3 hours a day for them to run through the process of taking the manual entry data from these spreadsheets and putting it through their ERP system for ordering. So that's around 700 hours a year that's now saved this organization. So that's a considerable amount of time that's been leveraged by doing this. Again, 0 errors in deployment since this has been deployed. This one took a bit more longer because of the number of interaction steps, but it was about 8 weeks to deploy. So this was from start to finish was about an 8-week process. Again, while I say 6 weeks, 8 weeks, you do not pay for this time. This time is our time, but that's how long it takes us to get this operational and ready and in place to replace in the long term the processes your workers are doing. Finally, let's look at the last of these scenarios, which is a pharmaceutical company, and this is around a project creation process. So the first thing is this all starts when a new project is started, and what happens is that the project name is then collected by Ruby AI, so that's entered into a file for Ruby to collect from the end user. The project folder is then created. It then cycles through a list of permission sets. So this is all around use permissions and controls. So basically via a predefined list of who has access to what kind of projects based on project names and some defined variables, it can cycle through and apply the correct permissions to the project folder. So it's going to go through and it's going to make sure that project has the correctly assigned permissions and that any incorrect permissions have been stripped away from it. And then it's going to access the CRM system and it's going to create a notification to say that the project has been created, and it adds the link to that project folder into the CRM system, so it ties it up for the wider business. So when the business are looking for all files related to that process, they can go to that link, but the permission's already set before anyone gets to it. So this was a very manual process, and it was only taking about 0.2 of an hour per project, which doesn't sound a lot. This organization is doing hundreds of these projects though a month. So when you think about it in that time, it starts to add up. So it worked out to be about 28.2 full-time equivalent days a year that have been saved. So essentially about a month of someone's time over a year was being saved. So we can all quantify if that person was being paid, a decent salary, that giving them a month back of their time is hugely beneficial, because the process, didn't really give any value to anyone. Most of their time was spent assigning permissions to a folder, and it actually involved multiple people, because the people who were creating the project weren't the people setting the permissions and weren't the people who manages the CRM. Again, 0 errors since deployment, and this only took about 4 weeks to get up and running. So as Darko mentioned, some of these projects are quite quick and easy to get off the line, and it's something that we can certainly, when we're doing those discovery workshops with you, work to understand how quickly we think this is deployable and how much time we need to get this ready for you. I just wanted to highlight something that I talked about earlier, which is about how we price and structure Ruby AI differently. So other RPAs, you basically are paying for the bot, whether it's working 24/7 or whether it's not working at all. We don't work in that way. The way that we work is we have 4 models for Ruby AI, starting with a 20-hour per month use case all the way up to what we refer to as the unlimited hours use case. So the way that you're charged is based on the number of hours that the back-end robot is running for underneath Ruby AI. So if the processes that we're automating for you take 20 hours or less, then you're only going to need the base license. Now, if you scale up or have multiple processes or the process becomes more complicated, the next license allows you to have 120 hours per month of use time. And then if you outgrow that, it's 240 hours. But you only get charged for the license that you use at that time. So as I mentioned, we don't charge you anything until you start. We will tell you when we do the deployment process where we think you're going to be on this scale. And ultimately, if we actually then deploy it and go, well, we thought it was going to be 240 hours, but actually you're only looking at 110 hours, then great, you're only paying for a 120-hour license and you're all good. Every one of those licenses has exactly the same feature set. All the differences is the amount of time that's running. And this doesn't matter if it's one bot or 100 bots you have. So you could have one bot running for 20 hours, or you could have 20 bots running for 1 hour. They would both be under the same license. We don't charge you per instance. So you can save a huge amount of money. So that those models are available for you. And we will work through, as part of that design process, finding the right fit for you. And we're trying to find the most cost-effective way for you to do this. On top of that, we then offer the support packages. And this is where Planet IT comes in and makes things a bit different. So with Robotic AI and their solution, we are supporting that from the UK, from our support desk. So many of you will be support customers and be working with us. So that support falls into our UK support team. So you have 3 options for the support. So it's either core, standard, or advanced. And basically the way we've designed this is quite simple. It's about how complex your deployment is. If your deployment is 1 to 20 processes or about 5 to 10 days to implement, then it's a core product. If it's 21 to 40, 11 to 30 days to implement, it's going to probably be a standard support offering. Anything that's super complex, 41 plus, is going to be advanced. Realistically for us, the difference is how much time we think we're going to need to put to keeping you on track. And that's how we define those. Again, we'll be very clear and we're going to be very open and upfront when we're doing the design workshop about what we think the cost will be for you. There's no smoke and mirrors here. This is, as you can see all the way through this, it's about being clear and transparent with the way in which our product functions. So I just wanted to leave you with some thoughts around, as Darko's mentioned, the people that have already got successful deployments for this product. There's some household names on there you will see, kind of the UPSs of the world, and obviously Horman, who Darko already showed you one of their running use cases. This is a trusted product. It works really well, and we're really pleased to be able to bring this to market and enable people at businesses inside the UK to get their hands on Ruby AI and the technology that lies within it. I'm more than happy now to open the floor up to any questions. As I mentioned, you do have the Q&A function, which is on the taskbar for Teams. So more than happy to answer any questions that you do have at this point. I do appreciate your time and giving us up your 45 minutes of your time to go through Ruby AI and to understand a bit more about it. We will be sharing this recording so you can share it with others in your business should you wish to do so. Sorry, it's got the first question coming in. The problem with these Q&As, I have to read them at the same time, and I'm always really bad at reading and talking. So as a business with heavy legacy processes, how can I look to automate with Ruby AI is the first question that's come in. So if you're a legacy business and you're looking at Ruby AI and how you get involved, the first thing to do is we'll send you out a spreadsheet where you can document what the process looks like for you. And that's just a thought process to say, how do we think, what's clicked, what's interacted with. We'll then set up a design workshop where we'll work through with you how that process really works. There's nothing that's too legacy for Ruby to interact with. The key here is if you can interact with it as a normal user, if you have a person sat in front of the machine doing that job at the moment, then that's all you need to do is you need to go, right, if I can do it sat in front of a computer, they can do it. And that's the way to look at it. Nothing else needs to change, right? So if you have a little legacy systems but people are sat interacting with it via command line or via Citrix or via RDP, Ruby can do the same thing for you. The best thing to do is reach out, let's set up a design workshop and understand in a bit more granular detail your systems and the way that your systems are set up. The next question I can see here is around how this compares to Microsoft Copilot. So I suppose two very different products, right? So Microsoft Copilot is a product designed to heavily integrate to the 365 environment and to provide you machine learning, AI-driven results based on the data that's inside of your 365 environment. It doesn't do a lot of automation. Obviously, from the Microsoft space, you do have the Power Automate platform, which was previously Microsoft Flow. I think the key difference, if we look at the Microsoft estate for RPA, and we talk about Power Automate versus Ruby AI, is Power Automate can only integrate with Microsoft systems and a select number of third parties. And it's also charged per click. And per click for them is per interaction. So if you ask it to look up 1,000 folders, that's 1,000 clicks. It can get very expensive very quickly. Whereas our solution's based around the ability to look at how many hours of actual processing is being used, which is a much more realistic way to look at it, because it could be 1,000 steps in 2 minutes. So you're only getting charged for 2 minutes versus, those 1,000 steps would be 1,000 clicks with the Microsoft product. When you're comparing kind of AI products, a lot of things to be aware of is the kind of different spaces they sit in. So yeah, not a direct comparison with Microsoft Copilot. Microsoft Copilot is a very useful tool set, certainly for things like this meeting today, for transcripts and translations and things like that, but wouldn't be a lot of good for automating the discovery of documents or the scanning in and OCR of documents and converting them into ERPs and CRMs. I think, just checking on my refresh, it looks like that takes us to the end of the questions. Obviously, if you do have further questions or things that you think I wish I would have asked that, then you can always reach out. Sorry, I have just seen one more question come in, and I will address that. I feel like I should do. It's taken a bit longer for the questions to appear on my end, so I do apologise. So, question that's come in that says, how long did it take to run the processes with Ruby imitating human actions, e.g. the advanced manufacturing case? So if we just drop back to this scenario here, so this process, when Ruby's running it in the background, it's going to take it less than 2 hours. So if it was taking 2 hours for the human to run that process, then you would find normally it's about 50% of that time for Ruby to do it. You will always have limitations based on the systems you're interacting with. So SAP being a great example, the CRM platform, if the CRM platform has a natural lag or a slowdown when it's loading new windows, Ruby's going to be tied to that performance. It's not going to be able to go any faster than that system is. Anything that that can be done in the back end, though, Ruby's super fast at doing. So where it's taking data, scanning it in, doing the OCR, where it's doing the advanced AI scanning, all those pieces can happen really quickly. What tends to slow Ruby down will be interactions with systems. But if it takes a human 2 hours, it will always be less than the amount of time it takes a human to interact with a system that Ruby will take to complete that workload. So that's a good way to look at it. The good thing with this is, as Darko mentioned, you'll be running this off of your main system. So this can happen in the background with kind of very little interaction from you, or no interaction from you. So you won't actually see this happening. So therefore, if it does take an hour and it's sat waiting for a screen to load, you're not going to be watching it do that. So I had another question come in about how this differs from using Microsoft Power Automate with Copilot integration. The biggest thing here is, as I mentioned when talking about Power Automate, is that Power Automate has a very different pricing model, and Microsoft Power Automate is ultimately tied to the systems it can interact with. You can run, to a degree, you can run Power Automate in a installable version on a machine, but that still has to have direct access to Microsoft Power Automate cloud platform, and it also has to have the correct licensing to go with it. Many of the add-ons are charged separately, so if you want to interact with third-party solutions, you often have to pay a premium feature for that. There is a limitation to what it can do. Copilot will help you write Power Automate scripts, but it won't allow you to do too much with offloading the data. You can do some of that with Azure Vision Services, but then you're going to have to be able to develop all this yourself and own it. And one of the biggest things for us is that you don't have to. With this product, there's no cost of your time of setting this up. There's no need for you to fully understand how the product is developed and or how to program it, because that's our job. Our job is to program it, maintain it, and support it. If you go down the route of Power Automate, there is no support for that. And if you go to an agency who will deploy Power Automate for you, the first thing that they will ask you for is money up front to design the solution. With Ruby AI, you're not being asked for that. It's a zero cost product. You do not need to pay anything at this point.
James, if I can also add
to
your answer. So with the Power Automate, so in order to achieve a solution that's very robust and can cover all scenarios, what tends to happen is that you will need more different Azure services in order to achieve the functionality. So it gets complicated fairly quick, and to estimate the pricing based on that is very hard. So you will not know upfront what will be the cost for running this process, and you will not know what services are actually what cloud services are needed in order to create an architecture that's fully resilient and has all the components that are needed. In our case, you get a finished functionality for a cost which is known upfront. So one of the things that's really important there.
No, Darko, I really appreciate that. That's a perfect. You eloquently answered what I was getting stuck on there, so that's perfect. The final question that's come up is around errors during processing. So, Darko, are you able to talk about how the back-end product handles errors when something goes wrong?
Yeah, so it's answer with multiple options here. So definitely we have a error handling procedure. So anything that happens from a technical standpoint, if anything breaks, we can implement steps required to gracefully exit the process, or to create a ticket, or to send an email notification, whatever is the error handling procedure. Also, we have multiple options, and that depends on the nature of the process. Some processes can be retried, some cannot. So if the process can be retried, we can try it multiple times. Also, what frequently happens is that in case there is not a technical error, but a business error, meaning that some piece of data is not correct, or something happens in a scenario where it's not a technical failure, but actually it's a business related error. What we typically do is we forward those tasks back to the human, and or if it's a very rare scenario, so a scenario that happens once a month, and then there's no point in automating a situation that happens very rarely, we can turn those tasks back to the human to actually complete it manually. So way we handle errors is really different and depends on the nature of the process itself.
Great. No, I really appreciate that. That answered that perfectly for me. That kind of brings us to the end of those questions. So firstly, I want to say, Darko, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been great to have you with us to talk over in much more detail the Ruby AI product than we were able to at the AI event. If you're sat on this call and you're thinking, do you know what, I really want to find out more, reach out to your Planet IT account manager. They will be able to book in for you a discovery call where we can find out more about the processes that you have and work out where Ruby AI will fit really well for you. Or you can reach out to me directly. My email address is on the screen there, and I'm more than happy to speak to you about any of the questions you may have around the product or go into a bit more detail. If you're also sat on this thinking it'd be great to find out more information around Microsoft Copilot or Azure, we are running a workshop on the 6th and 7th of November. So a little plug there. So if you did fancy joining us to go into a bit more detail, then again, reach out to your Planet IT account manager, who will be able to direct you to that event and get you a seat on that. So it just comes for me to say thank you very much for joining us. I hope you found this useful. As I said, the recording will be shared probably in the next few hours. Thank you very much, and I will speak to you all soon. Have a good day.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.